also beginning to get something of an angry backlash from the ultranationalists. There's, for example, a TV outlet called Zagrad TV, which is, very, very strong on Russian Orthodoxy, Russian nationalism, and so forth. And I took a look at their site this morning, and one of their lead stories is, "And now the betrayal begins."
And the American Secretary of State Marco Rubio looked happier than he has for some time when he said that the ball is now in Russia's court. He was talking about the agreement he'd made with Ukraine for a 30-day ceasefire. American diplomats, but not Rubio, now go to Russia to see if Vladimir Putin will play ball too. Professor Mark Galeotti is an expert in modern Russia who writes unmissable pieces about the country in the Sunday Times and is director of a consultancy firm, Mayak Intelligence. He joins us now. Good morning.
Hello there.
What do we expect the Russian response to this ceasefire deal will be?
Now that's obviously the big question. And the honest answer is we don't know, in that it doesn't seem to be that the Russian media outlets and pundits who usually channel Kremlin thinking have been given a clear steer. What we're seeing in, for example, the Российская газета, the Russian government newspaper of record, is a very straight down the line factual reporting of what's going on. So, in other words, they're already sort of basically signaling that they haven't been told whether it's good news or bad, which does actually sort of speak to the fact that this really is, in some ways, a bit of a trap for Putin. In that, if he says no, he alienates Trump, and if he says yes, he alienates the nationalists at home.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, do you think then, I mean, I suppose the lack of any response shows that they're still trying to work out what the response might be. Do you think that President Putin probably feels a bit cornered now?
Yes, you see, up to now, he's been able to present himself as the, if it wasn't for those pesky Ukrainians, we might have peace, Donald, sort of figure. Because up to this point, the Ukrainians kept insisting on putting in demands for security guarantees or just simply ruling out an across-the-board ceasefire altogether. Now that they have folded, frankly, to the American demands, it does mean that all of a sudden Putin either has to make good on his implied willingness to be a reasonable interlocutor, or else exactly has to go back on them.
And what's the mood in the country like? I mean, it's hard to tell sort of overall, but broadly, do you think the people of Russia would welcome a ceasefire? Is it something that he can sell to them?
I don't think there's really a problem there about the mass. We know, for example, there has been opinion polling that's shown that more than 70% of Russians would accept whatever peace deal as long as Putin sort of is happy with it. What's actually really quite interesting is we're also beginning to get something of an angry backlash from the ultranationalists. There's, for example, a TV outlet called Zagrad TV, which is, very, very strong on Russian Orthodoxy, Russian nationalism, and so forth. And I took a look at their site this morning, and one of their lead stories is, "And now the betrayal begins." So it's clear that they have a suspicion that Putin is going to say yes, and they're already trying to paint this as some sort of terrible dereliction of duty. So there's a small, vocal, and unfortunately disproportionately politically powerful nationalist minority who are opposed. But most Russians, quite frankly, will be delighted to anything that sees the killing stop.
What do you think he's going to do? What's your gut say?
Oh, gosh. I think he's actually going to fall between two stools and say, well, we'll agree, but we have additional demands in order to accept this ceasefire, which will, frankly, please no one. And when the American delegation visits Moscow, which is due to be in any day now, they are really going to have to sort of hammer that home. If they can get through to Putin that this really is a kind of a crucial moment, then Putin may well fold. But I think his natural instincts are, as ever, just to try and reach some kind of compromise on the compromise, which will please no one.
Absolutely fascinating. Really appreciate your time. Professor Mark Galeotti there giving us the insight into what he thinks Russia will do next.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. Hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court. Wants the war to end, and I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
Number one. Number two, they made concrete steps and concrete proposals, not only accepting our proposal for a full ceasefire, which you can see the details of which are in our joint statement that we released together, but we also got into substantive details on how this war is going to permanently end. What type of next steps from the Ukrainian side. I will talk to my Russian counterpart in the coming days. Secretary Rubio will be with G7 foreign ministers in the next couple of days. We have the NATO Secretary General in the White House on Thursday, and we'll take the process forward from there. As a result of that, and I think as a result of this positive step forward, the president has decided to lift the pause on aid and on our security assistance to Ukraine going forward, and that's effective immediately.
Yes, that's the offer. The offer is to stop the shooting. The goal here is the only way out to end this war is to negotiate out of it. There's no military solution to this war. The solution to this war and the way to end it into and other methods, but they'll obviously be well aware. And our hope is that the Russians will say yes, that they will also agree. So the shooting will stop, the killing will stop, the dying will stop, and the talks can begin about how to end this war permanently in a way that's acceptable and enduring for both sides.
Deadline set, sir.
Well, the deadline is we hope to do this as soon as possible. Every day that goes by, the goal here is peace. That's the president's goal. The best goodwill gesture the Russians can provide is to say yes. To say yes to the offer that the Ukrainians have made to stop the shooting, to stop the fighting, and get to the table. If they do that, that's the best goodwill sign we could see. Obviously, as part of that Treasury and his counterpart on the Ukrainian side. And so the president, and you see that expressed, both presidents will instruct the appropriate members of our governments to bring to finality the signature of the deal and the signature of this agreement. So that was communicated today, and that's going to happen.
But very importantly, and I said it, Ukraine, ceasefire. Ukraine, ceasefire. Just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. We can get this horrible war where 2,000-3,000 soldiers a week, every week, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 sometimes. I get the reports, and they're not American soldiers. They're Ukrainian and they're Russian. But people are being killed outside of that. People are being killed in the cities as things explode throughout the cities. And we want to get that war over with. So I think it's a very big, I think it's a big difference between the last visit you saw at the Oval Office and this. So that's a total ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. But I think the ceasefire is very important. If we can get Russia to do it, that'll be great. If we can't, we just keep going on and people are going to get killed, lots of people.
Is Zelensky invited back to the White House?